Fear in fighting is often misunderstood. People assume it comes from sheer size, raw violence, or explosive aggression. They believe the most dangerous fighter is the one who looks the angriest or hits the hardest. But the kind of fear that truly unsettles opponents does not announce itself. It enters quietly and takes control before the first move is made. That is why Bruce Lee left such a lasting impression on those who faced him. He did not rely on intimidation, raised voices, or theatrical dominance. What made him unsettling was the complete absence of emotional disturbance. No tension in his expression, no impatience in his posture, no signal of what he intended to do next. Standing in front of him felt wrong in a way opponents could not explain. They expected emotion, but found none. They looked for pressure, but met stillness, and in that stillness, uncertainty grew. When someone remains composed while chaos builds, it sends a powerful message. They are not overwhelmed. They are in control. The one thing that truly made Bruce Lee intimidating was not something people could measure or imitate easily. It was not silence used as a tactic, not physical speed, and not raw strength. Those things can impress, but they do not always create fear. What created fear was something far more unsettling, his absolute control over his emotions. In moments of confrontation, most fighters experience an internal storm before anything happens on the outside. The heart rate increases, breathing becomes shallow. Thoughts race ahead, imagining outcomes that have not yet occurred. Ego enters the picture, demanding dominance, validation, or proof. Anger follows closely, trying to push the body into action before the mind has fully understood the situation. This emotional surge feels powerful, but it is actually destabilizing. Bruce Lee recognized this early. He understood that when emotions take control, decision-making weakens, timing suffers, movements become predictable, energy is wasted reacting instead of responding. So instead of letting emotions rise unchecked, he trained himself to remain steady. He did not suppress emotions forcefully, nor did he deny their presence. He simply refused to let them dictate his actions. When others stepped into confrontation with visible tension, Bruce Lee entered with composure. His face revealed nothing. There was no tightening of the jaw, no flaring of the nostrils, no restless shifting of the body. His breathing stayed slow and controlled, allowing oxygen to flow evenly and keeping his nervous system stable. His eyes remained focused, not darting around or locking in with aggression, but calmly observing everything in front of him. This calmness carried a powerful message. It signaled readiness without urgency. It suggested confidence without arrogance. Most importantly, it communicated that he was fully aware of the situation and fully in control of himself. To an opponent, this is deeply disturbing. When you face someone whose emotions are visible, you can read them, you can sense fear, impatience, or overconfidence. But when you face someone who reveals nothing, uncertainty begins to grow. Uncertainty is where fear thrives. Opponents could not tell what Bruce Lee was thinking. They could not predict when he would move or how he would respond. There were no emotional cues to guide their strategy. This forced them to rely on assumptions, and assumptions create hesitation. Hesitation weakens confidence, and once confidence begins to crack, fear takes its place. Bruce Lee's emotional control also prevented escalation. Many confrontations intensify because both sides feed off each other's emotions. One person's anger triggers the other's aggression. One display of ego invites another. Bruce Lee broke this cycle. His calm did not give opponents anything to push against. Without emotional resistance, their aggression lost direction. This control extended beyond the moment of confrontation itself. Because he did not allow emotions to spike early, his energy remained conserved. While others burned energy through tension and anxiety, he stayed relaxed and prepared. This meant that when action became necessary, his body responded instantly and efficiently. There was no delay caused by inner conflict. Movement followed intention cleanly. What made this truly intimidating was consistency. Bruce Lee did not appear calm only when conditions were favorable. He remained composed even when pressure increased. Even when intensity rose, his emotional state did not collapse. This consistency told opponents that his calm was not an act, it was a trained condition. And trained calmness is far more dangerous than temporary aggression. Most fighters try to appear fearless. Bruce Lee did not need to perform fearlessness. He removed the internal chaos that creates fear in the first place. By mastering his emotional state, he mastered the environment around him. People standing across from him sensed this immediately, even if they could not explain it. The fear he created did not come from threats or displays of dominance. It came from an imbalance. Opponents felt themselves becoming tense while he remained relaxed. They felt their emotions rising while he stayed level. That imbalance placed them at a disadvantage before any physical exchange began. This is why emotional control was the one thing that truly created fear. It removed predictability. It conserved energy. It sharpened the timing, and it shifted power silently. Bruce Lee was not reacting to the situation. He was choosing how and when to engage. That choice, held calmly under pressure, is what made him intimidating in a way few people ever are. Fear does not always come from what someone does. Sometimes it comes from what they refuse to do. Bruce Lee refused to let emotions lead, and in doing so, he led everything else. Aggression may look intimidating, but it is actually one of the easiest states to understand. When someone is angry, their intentions become visible, their body tightens, their movements become sharper but less controlled, their emotions rush ahead of their judgment. This predictability gives opponents information, and information reduces fear. You may still feel threatened, but you are no longer confused about what is happening. Anger announces itself. It reveals direction. It exposes impatience. An aggressive fighter often commits too early, moves too forcefully, and overextends in the heat of the moment. These behaviors create openings. Experienced opponents know how to wait for these openings. They know mistakes will come because aggression rarely stays disciplined for long. Calmness is different. Calmness does not reveal intention. Calmness does not rush. Calmness does not show urgency. It gives nothing away. When someone remains calm in a confrontational situation, there are no obvious signals to read, no emotional cues, no tension patterns, no predictable rhythm. This absence of information creates discomfort. This is why calmness feels unsettling. The human mind looks for patterns in order to feel safe. When patterns disappear, the mind struggles. It starts filling the silence with assumptions. It imagines possibilities. It questions its own position. Fear begins not because of what is happening, but because of what might happen. Bruce Lee understood this deeply. His composure removed the opponent's ability to anticipate his actions. They could not tell when he would move, how he would move, or why he would move. His calm presence gave no timeline, no warning, and no emotional signal. Every option remained open. This uncertainty placed enormous pressure on the opponent's mind. Without clear signals, the opponent was forced to stay constantly alert. Constant alertness is exhausting. The mind begins to race, trying to predict every possible outcome at once. This internal conflict drains focus and confidence. While Bruce Lee remained relaxed, his opponents became mentally tense. Calmness also disrupts expectations. In confrontation, people expect emotional escalation. They expect tension to rise on both sides. When one person refuses to escalate emotionally, the balance shifts. The aggressive person feels exposed. Their intensity has nothing to push against. Their emotional energy meets silence instead of resistance. This imbalance creates doubt. Doubt weakens decision-making. The opponent begins to question their strategy, their timing, and even their confidence. They wonder why the calm person is not reacting. They wonder what they are missing. This internal questioning becomes a distraction, pulling attention away from the present moment. Fear grows fastest in this space. Not loud fear, but quiet fear. The kind that tightens the chest and slows reactions, the kind that causes hesitation at critical moments, the kind that makes a person second-guess their own instincts. By remaining calm, Bruce Lee forced opponents into this mental state before any physical action occurred. Calmness also keeps control centralized. An aggressive person gives control to emotion. A calm person keeps control within awareness. Bruce Lee did not allow his emotions to set the pace. He set the pace himself. This meant that he could wait without losing readiness and act without losing balance. Opponents sensed this control instinctively. Even if they could not explain it, they felt it. They felt that he was not being pushed into action. He was choosing when and how to engage. That sense of choice is powerful. It suggests preparation, confidence, and clarity. Most people confuse calmness with passivity. Bruce Lee demonstrated the opposite. His calmness was active. It was alert, focused, and responsive. It was not empty. It was ready. This made it far more dangerous than aggression, which often burns itself out quickly. Aggression may intimidate at first glance, but calmness lingers. It stays in the opponent's mind. It creates psychological pressure that builds over time. By the time physical action begins, the opponent is already tired mentally, while the calm person remains centered. This is why calmness is scarier than aggression. It does not rush. It does not reveal. It does not weaken itself through excess emotion. It holds space, keeps options open, and lets uncertainty do the work. Bruce Lee mastered this state, and through it, he controlled situations without needing to dominate them openly. Fear did not arise from what he showed. It arose from what he withheld, and that restraint is what made his calm presence so deeply unsettling. In confrontational situations, many fighters depend on intimidation to gain an advantage. They try to overwhelm their opponent early by showing aggression, intensity, or dominance. The goal is simple: shake the other person's confidence before the fight truly begins. This approach can work against those who are unprepared or emotionally reactive, but it fails completely against someone who does not respond in expected ways. Bruce Lee understood this weakness deeply. Instead of meeting intimidation with intimidation, he removed himself from the emotional exchange entirely. While others attempted to assert dominance through visible force or aggression, he stayed controlled, calm, and observant. This refusal to engage on an emotional level changed the psychological balance immediately. Confidence depends heavily on feedback. When someone acts aggressively, they expect a reaction, fear, tension, or hesitation. That reaction confirms their sense of control. Bruce Lee denied opponents this confirmation. He did not flinch. He did not escalate. He did not mirror their energy. Without feedback, the opponent's confidence had nothing to anchor itself to. This absence of reaction created mental strain. Opponents began to question themselves. They wondered why their intimidation was not working. They wondered whether Bruce Lee saw something they did not. This uncertainty slowly chipped away at their self-assurance. Confidence that is questioned internally becomes fragile very quickly. While others were mentally active, Bruce Lee remained mentally economical. He conserved energy by staying present rather than reactive. Instead of burning focus on emotional displays, he used his awareness to observe patterns, posture, and timing. His mind stayed clear while others became increasingly scattered. This imbalance was subtle but powerful. One side grew tense and restless, the other stayed relaxed and composed. Over time, this difference became impossible to ignore. The opponent's thoughts multiplied, doubts crept in. Small hesitations appeared. Decisions became slower and less certain. Psychological pressure does not always arrive loudly. Often, it builds quietly. Bruce Lee's control applied pressure without force. The longer he stayed composed, the heavier the pressure felt on the opponent. They felt watched without knowing what was being noticed. They felt evaluated without knowing the criteria. This constant uncertainty drained confidence steadily. Silence played a key role in this process. Silence leaves space for imagination, and imagination often works against confidence. When someone does not respond the way you expect, your mind starts filling in gaps. You begin to imagine worst-case scenarios. You question your strategy. You hesitate where you would normally act decisively. Bruce Lee understood that unpredictability paired with control is destabilizing. Aggression alone can be managed. Silence combined with clarity is far more difficult to handle. It removes familiar reference points. The opponent no longer knows how to adjust or what to prepare for. As confidence eroded, strategy collapsed. Plans depend on predictability. When reactions are consistent, strategies hold. When reactions disappear or change unexpectedly, strategies lose structure. Bruce Lee's presence dismantled strategies before physical action even began. Importantly, this did not require him to prove dominance. He did not need to posture or intimidate. His calm presence did the work silently. Confidence drained not because he attacked it directly, but because he refused to support it through predictable responses. This is why his control was so effective. It shifted the burden of instability onto the opponent. While Bruce Lee remained steady, others carried the weight of uncertainty alone. Over time, that weight became too heavy. True dominance does not need to announce itself. It reveals itself through composure. Bruce Lee's control communicated a simple but powerful message. He was not being affected, and when someone realizes they cannot affect you emotionally, their confidence begins to crumble. It was not force that broke confidence. It was restraint. It was patience. It was a presence. Bruce Lee understood that by mastering himself, he could quietly unravel others without ever raising his voice or rushing his actions. That is how control destroys confidence slowly, silently, and decisively. What truly unsettled fighters about Bruce Lee was not just how he behaved in a moment of confrontation, but how consistently he maintained his composure regardless of pressure. Many people can appear calm briefly, but that calm often collapses when intensity increases. Bruce Lee's did not. As situations became more demanding, his clarity did not fade. It remained steady, controlled, and reliable. This consistency sent a powerful signal. It showed that his calmness was not situational or performative. It was not something he switched on temporarily. It was a trained state. Fighters sensed that even if the situation escalated, his inner condition would remain unchanged. That realization created lasting unease. When pressure rises, emotions usually take over. Fear speeds decisions. Anger clouds judgment. Ego pushes people into unnecessary risks. Bruce Lee did not fall into these patterns. As intensity increased, his awareness sharpened instead of narrowing. This meant his reactions would always be precise rather than impulsive. His actions would come from understanding, not emotion. This precision made him difficult to predict. Emotional fighters follow patterns because emotions push them into familiar reactions. Calm fighters do not. Bruce Lee could wait without losing readiness and act without warning. His timing was intentional, not rushed. Every movement had purpose. There was no excess and no hesitation. Fighters fear unpredictability when it is paired with control. Unpredictability alone can be chaotic and dangerous, but chaos eventually creates mistakes. Control alone can be managed through patience, but when unpredictability and control exist together, there is no clear strategy to rely on. Bruce Lee embodied this combination completely. He could adapt instantly without showing panic or confusion. Changes in the situation did not disrupt his balance. He did not freeze, rush, or overcorrect. Instead, he adjusted naturally, as if the change had always been expected. This adaptability made him mentally exhausting to face. Facing someone like this drains confidence over time. The opponent cannot relax, because there are no patterns to settle into. They cannot rush, because rushing creates openings. They cannot wait passively, because they do not know what they are waiting for. This constant mental tension lingers long after the encounter ends. Even after stepping away, fighters replayed the experience in their minds. They remembered the absence of emotional reaction. They remembered the calm stare. They remembered how their own tension contrasted with his stillness. That contrast stayed with them. It forced reflection and discomfort. Fear usually fades when the threat is gone. But the fear Bruce Lee created was psychological. It was rooted in uncertainty and imbalance, not physical damage. Psychological fear lasts longer because it challenges confidence and self-perception. Fighters questioned themselves, not him. What made this fear especially powerful was restraint. Bruce Lee did not escalate unnecessarily. He did not show off. He did not chase dominance. He left space, and in that space, the opponent's mind worked against itself. Fear grew not from action, but from absence. Fear was not created by what he did loudly or aggressively. It was created by what he refused to do. He refused to panic. He refused to react emotionally. He refused to give clues. That restraint made his presence linger long after the moment passed. Fighters could forget punches, but they could not forget composure. They could recover from physical pressure, but not from the realization that they were mentally outmatched. This is why the fear lasted beyond the fight. It was not tied to injury or defeat. It was tied to awareness. Bruce Lee showed what happens when someone remains centered while others lose balance. That memory stays. And once experienced, it is not easily forgotten. Most people grow up believing that respect is earned through force. They think the loudest voice wins the argument, the toughest posture wins the confrontation, and the most aggressive presence dominates the situation. This belief is reinforced everywhere, from movies, from competition, and from social pressure. As a result, many people equate intensity with power and aggression with authority, but this belief hides a weakness that few recognize. Bruce Lee demonstrated a completely different truth. He showed that real dominance does not come from overpowering others, but from mastering oneself. When a person cannot control their own emotions, they surrender control of the situation. Anger speeds decisions. Ego clouds judgment. Fear shortens perspective. These emotional reactions may feel powerful, but they actually hand control to the moment instead of holding it. Bruce Lee understood that whoever controls their emotions controls the pace. Pace determines everything. A rushed pace leads to mistakes. A forced pace creates openings. A chaotic pace drains energy. By remaining calm, he set the rhythm of every interaction. Others adjusted to him, not the other way around. This quiet control shaped outcomes before they became visible. When you control the pace, you control the outcome. Decisions become deliberate instead of impulsive. Timing becomes intentional instead of accidental. Energy is used precisely instead of wasted. Bruce Lee did not need to intimidate, because intimidation relies on reaction. He relied on composure, which creates imbalance in others. This principle extends far beyond fighting. In arguments, the person who raises their voice often believes they are gaining ground, but they are actually revealing insecurity. The calm person, by contrast, keeps clarity. They listen. They choose words carefully. This composure unsettles the other side because it removes emotional leverage. Without emotional leverage, pressure loses effectiveness. In leadership, the same rule applies. A leader who reacts emotionally creates instability. People lose trust because reactions are unpredictable. A calm leader creates confidence because decisions feel grounded. Bruce Lee's presence embodied this principle. He projected authority not through command, but through steadiness. In competitive environments, emotional control becomes even more powerful. Pressure situations expose weaknesses quickly. Those who panic rush into poor decisions. Those who remain calm see opportunities others miss. Bruce Lee thrived under pressure because pressure sharpened his awareness instead of overwhelming it. What most people miss is that emotional control is not passive, it is active discipline. It requires constant awareness and restraint. It demands the courage to resist ego and the patience to wait for the right moment. This discipline is invisible, which is why it is underestimated, but its effects are unmistakable. Emotional control unsettles others because it removes predictability. When someone cannot provoke you, they lose influence. When someone cannot rush you, they lose timing. When someone cannot intimidate you, they lose confidence. Bruce Lee removed these levers quietly, without confrontation. This is why fighters feared him. They could not push him emotionally. They could not force mistakes through aggression. They could not speed him up or throw him off balance. Their usual tools did not work, and when familiar tools fail, confidence collapses. Bruce Lee's dominance did not come from proving strength. It came from removing vulnerability. By mastering his inner state, he made himself difficult to influence, difficult to predict, and difficult to destabilize. That mastery carried into every interaction he entered. The lesson most people miss is simple, but uncomfortable. If you want power, stop trying to control others first. Learn to control yourself. When emotions stop driving behavior, clarity takes over. When clarity takes over, action becomes precise. And when action is precise, outcomes follow naturally. That was the real reason fighters feared Bruce Lee. Not because he was louder or more aggressive, but because he was unreachable emotionally. And a person who cannot be shaken holds a form of power that no display of force can replace. Bruce Lee's greatest impact was never limited to what happened in front of an audience or inside a fight. It lived in the way he carried himself when nothing was happening at all. His calm was not accidental, and his control was not a performance. It was the result of deliberate self-mastery practiced long before pressure appeared. What made him formidable was not intimidation, aggression, or display, but the fact that he could not be rushed, provoked, or shaken. In a world where most people lose clarity under stress, Bruce Lee remained centered. That center became his advantage. It shaped timing, dictated pace, and quietly decided outcomes. The real lesson is not about fighting others, but about understanding where real authority comes from. When you master your inner state, the outside world has fewer ways to control you. Fear loses its grip, pressure loses its power, and confidence becomes steady instead of fragile. Bruce Lee showed that the strongest presence in any room is not the loudest one, but the most composed. And once people sense that you cannot be moved emotionally, they understand something important. The fight is already decided.